Hey, what's going on there, guys? We are back for episode 2 of the podcast, going and driving to Top Deck to play some Standard. I am joined by Gregory Malton.
Yes, you are.
And today we are going to be talking about Theros. Theros, what we talked about last time. We're actually going to be talking about Standard, what we think about Standard, and the mechanics and whatnot. We're just going to do a rough and dirty on talking about, I don't know, what we think Standard's going to look like for the next upcoming weeks at least. And I don't know, we'll see where that gets us. So before we actually get started on any of the discussions about Standard, Constructed, Theros, any of that, what I wanted to talk about real quick was Cube. So the Cube on Magic the Gathering Online is back. Everybody was pretty happy about it, and I did a few Cube drafts. I posted a few pictures on the Magic group that we have on Facebook, and I was sharing the stuff that I was drafting. And about 3 o'clock last night in the morning, I was drafting, and I thought, like, you know what? I might as well do one more before I go to sleep because I'm an insomniac. So I ended up,
about right.
Yeah, that's because that's mainly what Magic players are. They're just insomniacs.
That's what I do most of my drafting, is 3 a.m. in the middle of the night online. Yeah.
I mean, it's so quiet. So I ended up joining a queue at 3 a.m., somewhere around there, somewhere in that region. And I posted to the Magic group, and I was like, all right, so early morning / late night drafting. I wanted to draft something with as little thinking required as possible. So I ended up drafting red-white Boros, and I ended up just crushing the first round. Round 2 comes around. I get to about 5 turns in, to the point where I resolve a Johnny Vengeant. I kill one of my opponent's things, and my internet shuts off. So
yep.
It always seems to conveniently happen whenever I'm doing anything important. And Fios is just like, no, well, you wanted to finish up this draft, that's not going to happen. What actually makes things worse is as soon as I turn off my computer, which is around like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm thinking like, wow, I'm just going to go to sleep at this point. I'm not even going to bother trying to like mess with this internet connection and fix anything and hope to reconnect, because at this point 10 minutes have already passed at least. I get a message from our good friend Dan asking me if I'm cube drafting. I'm thinking to myself like, well, yeah, sure, well, what of it? Turns out I was actually in the same queue as Travis Wu, and I was on his stream. The one time that I'm on his stream and in the same queue as him, and I possibly could have played against him. If I would have won that round 2, which it was fairly possible, I felt pretty confident about it. If I would have won that, chances are that I would have played against him, and I probably would have had a nice time getting to talk to him for a quick second there. And none of that happened because Fios.
Sounds about right. The one time that you end up in a queue with Travis Wu. The Wu queue.
The Wu queue. You end up getting kicked by Fios.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It happens. I ended up tweeting him on Twitter and telling him about it, and he was like, oh, that sucks. Can't remember verbatim what he said. I think it was beat down was what he said. Beat down. It was just kind of funny.
Well, that was nice that he tweeted you back.
Yeah, it was pretty nice.
Good guy, Travis.
He's a nice guy too. I wouldn't have mind playing against him. Or actually, I would have loved to play against him. He's an awesome Magic player.
Of course.
So yeah, that was my just little quick, well, not really so quick spiel about what happened last night that made me kind of irate. So now,
understandably,
let's actually get to what we're talking about here. So Standard, Greg, what are you brewing for Standard? Because you've been mulling things over for a little bit now.
I've been mulling things over for quite a while with no obvious answers. Where I'm at right now, though, is I will be first starting with a mono white white weenie a la Craig Wesco style build. This was a build I was trying to work on right after M14 came out, with cards like Brave the Element, a replacement for Fiend Hunters with Banisher Priest, Mutavault especially. It seemed like everything was right there, so I tried it right after M14 came out, and the meta just wasn't having it, especially Jund. You'd think that Brave the Elements would protect against Bonfire and stuff like that, but I still had an incredibly hard time beating Jund, and it seemed like no matter where I played, half of my matchups for any tournament I would go to would be Jund. So I was like, you know what, I'm shelving this for a while, and I'm going to revisit it later. So cut to now, with cards like Soldier of the Pantheon and Spear of Heliod out, now seemed like the right time to revisit it when the meta is fresh, and it seems like a good starting place. So basically just playing a lot of early aggressive one-drops like Soldier of the Pantheon, who I'm expecting really good things out of. Dryad Militant, another 2/1 for 1 mana creature. And also Judge's Familiar, which a couple of people have been going, hey, why Judge's Familiar? And my answer is...
because Mana Tithe?
Well, it's the closest thing we have to a Thalia-like effect. Thalia was a huge part of the original mono-white strategy. And with her rotating, I like Judge's Familiar. I mean, the chances that you're actually going to counter something with him are very slim. You're never actually going to counter anything, and he can't counter Supreme Verdict. But what he does do is he will put off your opponent from playing certain spells for a turn. And that turn is valuable with this type of cheap, aggressive strategy. So that's where I'm starting. Mono white Weenie with Spear of Heliod.
Doesn't sound bad. I mean, to have Glorious Anthem back, or at least a somewhat... I guess it's better and it's worse at the same time because it's legendary, so they can't stack.
Yeah, that's the difficult part. That's why I'm not running 4. I'm specifically running 3 because I do want to see one every game, but I don't want to draw 2. Yeah. So 3 is my starting number for the deck as I'm going into play testing with it. Another reason I'm starting out with the deck, though, is as a starting point, is it's very easy to, if that deck doesn't seem like it's working, go into green-white or red-white and basically use the shell that I have right now and just move into a second color. Particularly green-white seems like it could be a fantastic option with cards like Fleecemane Lion, Super Watch Wolf coming into the fray, and old staples like Luxodon Smiter, possibly even Advent of the Worm. There seems to be a very nice curve with above-average power to toughness, which I'm personally expecting the meta for the first month to be very aggressive, and like all aggro decks. That's really what happens after rotations. People gravitate towards aggro decks until the meta sort of sorts itself out. So, turn 2 doing a 3/3, turn 3 doing a 4/4, and then turn 4 playing a 5/5 seems like a beautiful curve, which will probably work very well, at least for the first month.
Yeah. See, whenever it comes to aggro strategies, I wanted to play green-white, and I actually have this shell of a list that I've been putting together that I have opened up on, Decked Builder, on the app on my phone here. And I'm going to read it off to the listeners out here, but I'm also going to read it off for you because I don't think that you've looked at this list yet. But the list is something to the extent of 4 Fleecemane Lion, 3 Scavenging Ooze, 4 Voice of Resurgence, 4 Luxodon Smiter, 4 Witch Stalker, because Witch Stalker is actually pretty seemingly awesome at this point. I really like Hexproof, and I think the fact that Black has a pretty good possibility of being played. So, I mean, Witch Stalker can get bigger, but if he just stays at 3/3 for 3 with Hexproof, that's just fine as well. I have 3 Pelucranos, World Eater, 2 Arbor Colossus. The Arbor Colossus, this is probably the most interesting card in here, in this deck, because I think that with Xenagos and with Domri Raid, that cards like Aurelia are going to be a lot better now. So naturally, I'm gonna try and find ways. Like, the deck is really good whenever it comes to ground creatures and anything that doesn't have like flying evasion. But whenever it comes to like just about anything that has flying, like, you really don't have reach for it.
Sure.
And Arbor Colossus is a 6/6 for 5. He has reach, and if you want to go with Monstrous, which Monstrous is triple generic, triple green, and it's Monstrous 3. Whenever you activate it and it becomes monstrous, destroy target creature with flying and opponent controls. So just having that hate for it just having Plummet on it at a 6 mana cost that makes him a 9/9 is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that was a card I was not actually expecting to hear on the list, but hearing you basically break it down, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I really love the Arbor Colossus. I got a chance to talk to John Wallace, which you listeners out there may know him from winning SCG Columbus a while back ago. It was during the summer. It was
mid-June.
Mid-June, yeah, that's what it was. But yeah, John is a close friend of ours, and he's in our Magic group. But we were talking about cards in Theros that we would think would, or we would imagine would be like really, really good just right from the start. And the one big thing that we both agreed on was Arbor Colossus. I really want that card to see play. Like a 6/6 for 5 is just fine. Like I'm already running Pelucranos, which is a 5/5 for 4. So you have this good assortment of creatures that are already like power creeps in terms of their mana cost.
Yeah, no, it's the super curve for sure.
Yeah.
I actually pulled an Arbor Colossus for the Sunday pre-release in my green pool.
Oh, that's so good.
I was very happy just to open that in a green pool.
Yeah.
But I was happy to see him every game. The guy was actually, I think on paper it's a card I would just really overlook and wouldn't think much of. But having got a chance to play with him in a green sealed event, I really liked him.
Yeah. So continuing the list, because I only mentioned the creatures here. For the spells, 3 Selesnya Charm, 3 Unflinching Courage, and 4 Advent of the Worm. Now, you did mention Advent of the Worm being a card that you would imagine would see a lot of play, and that's one of those cards from Dragon's Maze that I really, really liked. I really liked playing it in Bant Delver, and it's just a card that's so good. I mean, instant speed, being able to essentially flash in a 5/5 creature with Trample is just pretty nuts.
Yeah, agreed. And especially, I think with a deck like Green-White, similar to Mono-White, a big weakness of the deck is Supreme Verdict. And having Advent of the Worm in a main deck, it's a really great option as a recovery from a Supreme Verdict.
Yeah.
Especially if they go turn 4 Supreme Verdict, you go, okay, into your turn, flash in this 5/5 Trampler. Yeah. You're back to a very good spot on the board, and that doesn't really set you back at all.
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, whenever it comes to playing up against the control matchups as well, Fleecemane Lion is awesome as well, because with that Monstrous for 5, even though the Monstrous is only 1, it gains Indestructible and Hexproof, which it keeps it away from like Azorius Charms, it keeps it away from Supreme Verdicts. It's being a little bit more broad with what we're going with, but if your opponent tries to go and play Supreme Verdict and you have the mana open and they're tapped out, like, keeping a 4/4 around is just fine. But Selesnya Charm is probably the thing that I'm most excited for in this deck.
Oh, yeah.
Being able to have one card that can essentially trump most of the gods if our opponent's playing them, and also be able to get rid of things like Desecration Demon, Underworld Cerberus, well, pretty much any 5/5. The only thing that it doesn't hit is the new Dragon, Storebreath Dragon, which I'm running in black-red mid-range, which I really love. Pro-white, haste, flying, 4/4. Just completely avoid Selesnya Charm.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think Selesnya Charm is just really real at this point.
It's going to be a big staple, at least for the next coming months.
Yeah.
The amount of stuff it deals with is unreal.
Yeah. For the sideboard's a little bit more kind of scattershot here, but I was putting in 4 Pacifism, because I feel like if mid-range gets somewhat big, like creature-based mid-range things with Domri Ray, just keeping my opponent from swinging in with fat things, Pacifism's just pretty alright. White doesn't have a huge variety of removal that it can use. Like, Spear is good, but like you have to keep a little bit more mana open for it. Like Pacifism, you just kind of play it and it's there, and it sticks around.
Side note about the Spear, at least for the mono white deck I'm brewing, I'm not even playing it for the destroy creature that dealt you damage, for that kind of, vengeance.
It's just Glorious Anthem.
Yeah, I'm just putting it in for the +1/+1. Yeah. If I get the chance and have the mana open to use that ability, that's great. But I am never relying on that, nor is that the main focus of having the card in, for sure. And I agree with the whole Pacifism inclusion as well. Now that we're losing Oblivion Ring, We need things to deal with larger creatures, or something like a Boros Reckoner, which just makes combat math extremely tricky.
Boros Reckoner's annoying.
Pacifism sounds like a great choice.
And Boros Reckoner is going to be pretty widely played because of Perforos.
Yeah, the triple devotion upgrade for both red and white.
It's just nuts.
I mean, he was already a good card before anything from Theros was spoiled, but the fact that he's also such a big devotion enabler for two of the gods, or just two of the colors in general, it makes him just that much more better.
And that's the thing that I like about him most, is whenever I'm playing red deck wins, moving away from like just the whole interaction with Young Pyromancer, playing things like Dynacharge, Shock, all that, using the cheap instants and sorceries and whatnot. Just looking at like a deck more along the lines of Big Red, being able to play like Boros Reckoners, Ash Zealots, even Rakdos Shred Freaks. Then you have like Boros Reckoner adds triple devotion. You play Perforos if your opponent gets rid of them, or if they get rid of your board or something like that. From that point on, you're just dealing 2 damage. So you have all of these really good haste creatures, and then I guess like Boros Reckoner is pretty much the only one that doesn't have haste amongst the bunch. But just being able to add that huge devotion is just really nice.
Definitely.
So moving on with the sideboard, the 4 pacifism, 1 Selesnya Charm to complement the 3 that are in the main board, so we have a playset hole whenever we need the removal. 2 Sundering Growth, because I guess it's strictly better than Naturalize in our case. It doesn't really do us much damage that it's double Selesnya hybrid, and being able to populate is somewhat relevant, I guess. You can get another Advent token, you can get another Voice token. It's pretty good for that. 3 Fiendslayer Paladin, because anything black-red, I just don't want them to be able to target with like Shock, Spears, anything like that. Just against mono-red, it gets to chump a lot of their 2 toughness creatures. It also has lifelink, so it gains you back life in those situations as well. 2 Rootborn Defenses to combat any Supreme Verdicts, anything like that. 1 more Unflinching Courage to combat anything that's hyper-aggressive and stupid. And 2 Bow. 2 of the Bow. Two Bow. Tim Tebow. 2 Bow of Nylea. So, I think the Bow is just really... It's really good. It's just kind of tricky, because that's one of those cards where you kind of look at it and you're like, well, I really don't know how good this card is. Like, it does so many things. It's a Swiss Army knife, but how many of those things are actually relevant? And I think for the sake of being able to just like gain back life, put +1/+1 counters on things because Gavany Township is gone, I think that's pretty relevant. Being able to deal 2 damage to a creature with flying, that's kind of hit or miss here and there. It really just depends on what you're playing against. But also being able to put up to 4 cards from your graveyard onto the bottom of your library. If you have something that can shuffle them up or something like that, being able to reuse things if you're playing like a long grindy match, I don't know, it gives you a little bit more options of what you can ultimately play. But the Bow, just to put +1/+1 counters whenever you need like that Gavany Township effect, and being able to gain life up against like something that's just super stupid blowout aggro, I think it's pretty nice for that.
Yeah, I think it's the versatility which makes having a sideboard option be a good choice.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you can do multiple things with only a few slots of your sideboard. You know, sort of like how the card from Dragon's Maze, Wear Tear, which can either destroy an artifact or destroy an enchantment or destroy both for the fuse cost. That card was wonderful because it allowed you to save space in the sideboard because it did multiple things.
Yeah.
I think the same logic can be applied there to the Bow.
The thing that I like about Wear and Tear, though, at least for the sake of Modern, is that it's like having Disenchant, but it's like having a cheaper Disenchant if you're playing up against like Affinity. Like if you're playing up against Affinity and you need that like artifact removal, then just paying 1 red is better than paying like the cost of Disenchant to get rid of one of their artifacts for just 1 more mana.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed having it in my Modern sideboard for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty nice. So yeah, we'll see how the Bow goes. The Bow's probably like the most. It's probably the thing that's most likely going to change out of the sideboard, but with some testing we'll see how it goes, and I'll definitely keep you guys updated, and I'll probably be doing a deck tech of it nonetheless. But I definitely did want to talk about green-white really quick. So, any other ideas for Standard? What do you think about, I don't know, any cards in particular that seem to stand out?
What I've been doing for the past couple of months is looking at the RTR block constructed lists that have been doing well online and stuff like the RTR block dailies. And I've been paying pretty close attention to those. I think those are a very good way, especially right before rotation, to keep track of the meta and see what's going to be big after rotation finally happens. You know, so another reason why I think red-based aggro strategies are going to be a big thing right out of the gate from rotation is because the sheer number of them that have been doing well in the RTR block dailies, just the real cheap, aggressive red decks. So those will probably be all over the place. But another deck which I've had my eye on and that has been doing well in the dailies also is Esper Control. And I'm thinking that Esper Control is probably going to be one of the more chosen control strategies of the format starting out. You have really good finishers like Aetherling or Obsidat that are just going to probably start popping up all over the place. I'm expecting a resurgence of Aetherling. You have the Planeswalkers with Jace of Architect of Thought. That Jace, he's going to be all over the place. Even the recent price creep he's been having, I think is starting to show that too, that people are getting ready to put him in any control deck. He'll be everywhere. Also, the new Elspeth, Sun's Champion. A lot of people have been talking about using her for a finisher. I've been testing out with her. And Esper just provides a lot of good options where you have, you know, on the one hand, things like Supreme Verdict and Sphinx's Revelation, but then you also have the black-based removal.
Doomblades, Devour Flesh.
Doomblades, Devour Flesh, Hero's Downfall. And then you also have probably one of the best cards to come from Dragon's Maze, Far and Away.
Far and Away, yeah, Far and Away is just so good at this point. Well, it was really good last season. Back when, how many months ago was it that SEG Pit was?
When it was back in May.
That was in May. That was when both of us went. You ended up coming in 9th, and I got somewhere in the 20s, somewhere around there. Not anywhere to be. I don't think anywhere to prize out. What was it? Top 16 to prize?
I believe so.
Yeah, I didn't prize, but I still got. I still placed very, very well. I only had one actual round loss for the day, and it was against Blitz, where Blitz was just absolutely dumb. They nut drew on me, and there was just absolutely nothing I could play. But for those of you guys that have watched the channel and you've kept up to date with what I've been playing here and there, I did an update for Solar Flare right after I went to that event, and that's what I played at the event. And Solar Flare was just awesome, being able to reanimate Stormtide Leviathan, put him on the table, and just watch people's reactions where they're like, Stormtide Leviathan? Like, that's a thing? But my mindset was that Stormtide Leviathan basically shuts out, like, Blitz. So I decided to, like, test with that. I put that in there, and then I posted it to the group, and they're like, wow, like, you're really ballsy playing Stormtide Leviathan in a deck. But on top of that, like, it had a transformational sideboard where you just side out all the Reanimator stuff, and it just turns into Esper Control. You're running Sorens, you're running Blood Baron of Vizkopa, which is incredibly good up against Jund. What else? Obsidots were main board, Aetherlings were main board. You had 2 Gristlebrand's. Then I was running like 3 Liliana, 2 Jace to either mill myself or mill my opponent, which in one of the games, one of the rounds that I played up against a Esper Control matchup. So it was, I guess, if you want to call it a mirror match. And my opponent, game 1 lost to, I think it was just Gristlebrand beating him down. And game 2, he kept stuff like, I didn't reveal any of my Reanimator stuff or anything like that, so he just thought I was Esper Control. So he started milling me. And it was just like 1 Nefaliya Drowneyard, 2 Nefaliya Drowneyard triggers. Then he jaced me once, and then Unburial Rites hit the graveyard. And then he was like, oh.
Oops.
Shouldn't have been milling. Now you have messed up. So it was kind of funny seeing his reaction. He's like, wow, I shouldn't have been milling you. And it was only the case where if I didn't reveal anything Reanimator style, I would just keep it going in the game too and hope that would be the blowout win. Yeah. Was just the overwhelm based on them not knowing. And to a certain degree that worked. It seemed to work fairly well. But we do have Obsidot's aid, which I guess is kind of good. Like, you don't have Snapcaster Mage to recur it, so I don't know. I guess it's not as amazing, but if there's any way to go about playing like Obsidot's aid, like being able to play, is Faithless Looting was that no,
it was Dark Ascension.
Dark Ascension, crap. I wanted to play that.
Well, there is the other option in terms of reanimation of Whip of Erebos.
There's Whip. Yeah, Whip is... One of the big discussions that we had was about the ruling with Whip, Obsidot, and Aetherling. And for those of you guys that don't know, basically the replacement effect for Whip is not all-inclusive like you would imagine it would be, where it's like if it leaves and goes anywhere, it's exiled instead by Whip. What actually goes on with the Whip is if you exile Aetherling or Obsidot with their own ability and Whip is out there, and if you use the Whip to get them back out onto the battlefield, Obsidot and Aetherling's ability is actually going to work. It's going to exile them, and in the case of Aetherling, it comes back. In the case of Obsidot, it comes back during your next upkeep. So it pretty much navigates around that Whip effect of having the Whip permanently exile it. Just a little fun fact for you guys that don't know, because we had a quite a long discussion about it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to become a dominant strategy per se in Standard, but people outside of just our group here in Pittsburgh have caught on to this. Yeah. People on the internet have caught on to that strange loophole that Aetherling and Obsidot can exile themselves and avoid the whole exiled forever thing with their own abilities. So we'll see. It just makes them even harder to kill. As if they weren't hard enough to kill before, there's still a way that they can come back now.
It's just going to be nuts. I hope to see some cool stuff to be able to play off of Whip. Any big things like Ashen Rider is cool, but realistically, it's not the most efficient thing that you could be reanimating. I mean, it's definitely, it's big. It's a fat card. It's a 5/5 for 8. That is essentially Angel of Despair.
Well, a friend of ours from Top Deck Cards and Games, Jordan, he was talking about using the Whip with Lotleth Troll in a green-black, I guess, rock deck. Using Lotleth Troll as an instant speed discard engine to get creatures into the graveyard.
I like that.
And then, flinging them with the Whip. One option he was talking about as a reanimation target was Giant Adaphage.
Yes.
The often overlooked green mythic from Gatecrash. Now, normally you're going to exile at the end of the turn whatever you reanimate.
But Adaphage makes a copy.
He makes a token, which does not count at all towards that whole "you're going to have to exile this thing" clause. And the copy sticks around.
That is degenerate.
I thought that was a very, very interesting choice of a reanimation target for sure.
Wow, that's really nice.
So just a little something to think about.
Yeah, definitely. So we are here, just right outside of Top Deck Cards and Games, so we're going to wrap this up here. The talking points that we had were Standard, talking about Greg's mono white, my green white deck, and also some ideas for the Whip for you guys, because Adaphage is pretty real whenever it comes to reanimating it with the Whip. Thank you guys for joining us for another podcast episode, and we hope to see you back here really soon.